At last, Eze and Nkechi arrived at the Pond of Chains, where witches and warlocks had bound the souls and destinies of countless men. A malevolent spirit as tall as a palm tree stood guard, his eyes blazing with rage. "What do you seek here, daughter of Kalu?" the spirit demanded. "You have what is mine, and I have come to collect," said Nkechi with such boldness that astonished the spirit. "All here belongs to me," the spirit bellowed. "It was given freely." "Anyone who freely receives a stolen thing is a thief himself," Nkechi retorted. "How dare you?" the spirit roared, firing a deadly red beam at her. Nkechi countered with a lightning bolt of her own. A long time ago, in a beautiful African village, there lived a renowned palm wine tapper named Kalu, who had 2 wives, Oge and Amaka. Oge was gentle and kind-hearted, with a daughter as beautiful as the morning sun, named Nkechi. Amaka, however, was filled with envy. She resented Oge and Nkechi, and together with her own daughter, Zika, she cared for no one else but themselves. One fateful day, Amaka sought out a notorious Dibia, a powerful man steeped in black magic, to know if her daughter's destiny would ever surpass Nkechi's. The Dibia fixed his gaze upon his charms, his face gradually clouding with concern. "Nkechi's destiny is like a bright star, so much so that your daughter will be lost in its shadow. Zika will forever live in Nkechi's shadow," the Dibia declared solemnly. Hearing this, Amaka's face twisted with despair and anger. "No, no!" she cried, her heart pounding. "What can I do, Dibia? I must prevent this!" she pleaded, her voice thick with desperation. The Dibia lowered his gaze back to the charms, his expression darkening. When he looked up again, his eyes were cold and unfeeling. "There is a way," he replied slowly. "But know this. If you take this path, your heart will be dark as hell, and your hands will be stained with innocent blood." "I don't care, as long as it's not my daughter's blood," Amaka responded, her voice cold with resolve. The Dibia nodded. "Very well, then. You shall have your wish." 3 days later, Oge fell terribly ill. No medicine could ease her suffering, and her strength faded with each passing day. By the 3rd day, she had passed away. Nkechi was shattered, her heart heavy with sorrow as she wept uncontrollably. Kalu, devastated by the mysterious death of his beloved wife, struggled to keep his composure. Amaka, on the other hand, concealed a cruel smile, satisfied that her plan to secure her daughter's future had begun. As Nkechi wept by her mother's grave, a strange young man approached her quietly, his voice gentle yet firm. "Do not weep, for there is evil lurking in your home. You must be strong to face it," he told her. Just then, cries of alarm rang out from the compound. Nkechi hurried back and found her father being carried in by his workers. Kalu had fallen from a palm tree and was gravely injured. "It's a miracle if he survives this," the medicine man said, shaking his head. "This is no ordinary fall. Your father was known as Kalu the monkey for a reason. He's never fallen from a tree before." The medicine man's words echoed in Nkechi's mind, and she remembered the stranger at her mother's grave. She rushed back to find him, desperation in her eyes. "Who are you? What do you know about my family?" she demanded. "I am Eze," he introduced himself. "I come from a line of god kings, and I have been sent to aid you because our destinies are bound together." "Aid me? How?" Nkechi asked, confused. "Your family is under a spell. You have only 3 days to break it," Eze replied gravely. Nkechi's heart pounded as understanding dawned. All the strange misfortunes suddenly made sense. "Who would do this to my family and why?" she asked, her voice trembling with anger. "All will be revealed in time. For now, you must act quickly. Your father's life depends on it, and there is a way to bring your mother back from the dead, Eze explained. Nkechi gasped, disbelief and hope battling within her. My mother? She whispered. Yes, your mother, Eze replied. And so, Nkechi and Eze set out on their journey, plunging into the dense forest. As they traveled, Eze shared the dark truth. To fulfill Amaka's wishes, the Dibia needed to eliminate her parents, Oge and Kalu. By breaking down Nkechi's family, he hoped to weaken her destiny. He placed the souls of Oge and Kalu within a sinister object, a death calabash, and hid it in the wicked swamps of Otokoto, a place where malevolent spirits roamed freely. Our task is to retrieve this death calabash and shatter it in your father's compound, Eze explained. Only then will the spell break, and justice will be done. With this, they pressed on, their journey fraught with unknown dangers and trials, each step bringing them closer to a battle against darkness that could either save Nkechi's family or doom them all. Nkechi and Eze stopped deep in the thick forest before a towering Iroko tree. Eze explained that they needed to wait for the great priestess of Edo, who held the power to send them into the realms of the evil swamp of Otokoto. As they waited, Nkechi noticed an old woman struggling under the weight of a heavy bundle of firewood. Moved by pity, she wanted to help, but Eze stopped her. We have to stay focused on the mission, Nkechi. The priestess could arrive at any moment. But Nkechi's heart wouldn't let her ignore the old woman's struggle. She knew her mother would never turn away someone in need. Ignoring Eze's protests, she greeted the old woman warmly and offered to carry the firewood to her house. The old woman's face brightened with gratitude, and Nkechi lifted the heavy bundle. Eze followed reluctantly, muttering to himself, "This girl doesn't understand the urgency of our mission." Once they reached the old woman's modest hut, Nkechi set down the firewood. She then noticed a pile of dirty plates and pots stacked nearby and offered to wash them. What? Eze nearly exploded with frustration, but Nkechi was already seated, scrubbing the pots diligently. The old woman noticed Eze's irritation and stepped closer to him. To win a woman's heart requires skill, but to live with her, you must learn patience, the old woman said with a knowing smile. Eze frowned, confused. She will teach you kindness and patience, and you will help her realize her own strength. This is why your destinies are intertwined, the old woman declared. Eze looked at her, bewildered. How do you know that? What I know is not your business, and how I know is not your business, the old woman replied, and with a flicker, she transformed into the great priestess of Edo. Eze and Nkechi stood in shock. You disguised yourself? Nkechi exclaimed. Yes, replied the priestess. Only those who are good-hearted can overcome pure evil. She raised her staff, giving them detailed instructions for the journey ahead. Brace yourselves. Where I send you is pure evil, but your goodness will repel them, she declared. And with a wave of her hand, Eze and Nkechi vanished into thin air. Amaka, meanwhile, was in her chambers, gloating over how smoothly her plans were unfolding. She held up a red totem egg, smiling. You are small, yet you cause great evil, she gloated. Then the evil Dibia appeared before her. She greeted him with excitement. Great Dibia, I was just coming to see you. Our plans are working beautifully, she said, barely containing her glee. But the Dibia's expression was hard and cold. You fool! Didn't I tell you not to touch Kalu until 2 days had passed? He snarled. Yes, great one, Amaka replied, her excitement faltering. But I thought if I hastened things, so you could control the sales of Kalu's palm wine, the Dibia cut her off sharply. You greedy woman. Now your rival's daughter is on her way with a powerful guardian seeking the calabash of death. Amaka's face turned pale. What? No, that can't be. I just saw Nkechi. You fool, the Dibia spat. If Nkechi succeeds and breaks the spell, both you and your daughter will go mad." With that, he vanished, leaving Amaka trembling in fear. Meanwhile, in the evil swamps of Otokoto, where malicious spirits roamed freely, Nkechi and Eze felt a chill run down their spines. Stories had been told of men who had entered these swamps and never returned. Yet, as they walked deeper, the spirits seemed to shy away from Nkechi, as the priestess had foretold. They soon came upon a passage known as the Corridor of Thorns, where long, thorny vines are twisted together to form a narrow path. "Beware of these thorns," Eze warned. "If they pierce your skin, you will lose all memory of who you are and why you're here." Nkechi nodded, her heart pounding as they navigated carefully. Just as they were nearing the end, Nkechi's foot slipped, and her arm snagged on a thorn, pricking her skin. She let out a scream as Eze pulled her to safety, but it was too late. The enchantment had taken hold. "Who are you?" Nkechi asked, panic in her eyes as she pushed Eze away. "What am I doing here? Where am I?" Eze tried to calm her down, but she was now really agitated from the enchantment. Desperate, Eze remembered the priestess's advice and began singing a lullaby Nkechi's mother used to sing to her. Gradually, Nkechi's breathing slowed and clarity returned. "Eze!" she screamed and rushed into Eze's arms, relief flooding her face. Eze silently thanked the supreme god. "I thought I'd lost you," he confessed. Just then, sparks of lightning began dancing along Nkechi's fingers. "The thorns, they've awakened your powers," Eze said in awe. "Powers? What powers?" Nkechi asked, puzzled. Eze smiled. "I will show you," he said. Back in the shrine of the evil Dibia, the sorcerer was restless. He had warned Amaka that her madness would be certain if Nkechi succeeded. But he himself faced a far greater curse if she and Eze triumphed. He had to act quickly. At last, Eze and Nkechi arrived at the Pond of Chains, where witches and warlocks had bound the souls and destinies of countless men. A malevolent spirit as tall as a palm tree stood guard, his eyes blazing with rage. "What do you seek here, daughter of Kalu?" the spirit demanded. "You have what is mine, and I have come to collect," said Nkechi with such boldness that astonished the spirit. "All here belongs to me," the spirit bellowed. "It was given freely." "Anyone who freely receives a stolen thing is a thief himself," Nkechi retorted. "How dare you?" the spirit roared, firing a deadly red beam at her. Nkechi countered with a lightning bolt of her own, and Eze joined in. Together they subdued the spirit, who disintegrated with a final anguished scream. Nkechi reached into the pond and retrieved the calabash of death. "Now let's return and break the spell," Eze said. They re-emerged into the land of the living, trekking back through the forest. As they walked, Nkechi saw another old woman carrying a heavy load. Her heart melted. "We need to be careful, Nkechi," Eze warned her gently. "I don't feel right about her." But despite Eze's warning, she approached the woman and offered to help. "Let me hold your calabash for you," the old woman offered kindly. Before Eze could stop her, Nkechi handed over the calabash, and in an instant, the woman transformed into the evil Dibia, vanishing with a sinister laugh. Eze and Nkechi stared, devastated. "It was Ofo, the evil warlock," Eze shouted, as Ofo appeared on the other side of the forest, holding the calabash. He smashed it on a rock, his laughter echoing around them. Nkechi's scream of anguish filled the air. "There's no reason for you to live anymore," Ofo sneered, firing a deadly beam at Nkechi, but Eze jumped in front of her, taking the hit. Ofo vanished, leaving Nkechi clutching Eze in her arms, weeping. "I'm so sorry, Eze. This is all my fault." "You must finish the mission," he whispered, his life slipping away. "But the calabash is destroyed. I was supposed to break it in my father's compound," she cried. But Eze's eyes closed, his last breath fading away, and Nkechi wailed, feeling the weight of her loss and despair. Back in Kalu's compound, the evil Dibia celebrated his victory in Amaka's chambers. "You saved the day, Great One," Amaka squealed, her voice brimming with excitement. "It was far too easy," the evil Dibia boasted with a wicked grin. Then his face turned serious. "Listen closely," he said. "You must finish off Kalu, and make sure the totem egg never leaves your hand." Amaka nodded eagerly, like a student obeying her master. As the Dibia vanished from her sight, she stepped out of her chamber, clutching the totem egg. To her shock, she found her daughter Zika standing just outside, staring in horror. Zika had overheard everything. "Zika, how long have you been standing there?" Amaka asked, fear flashing in her eyes. "Long enough, Mother," Zika replied, tears spilling over. "Tell me it isn't true. Did you really cause the death of Nkechi's mother?" "I did it all for you, my daughter," Amaka replied, trying to soothe her. "Nkechi's destiny would have overshadowed yours." "Stop it, Mother," Zika cried, shaking her head in disbelief. "We may not have liked them, but this? And now you're planning to kill my father too. Who are you, Mother?" "Silence, you ungrateful child," Amaka snapped. "Everything I did was for you." Angry and heartbroken, Zika snatched the totem egg from her hand and smashed it on the ground. "What have you done?" Amaka screamed, her voice full of horror. Suddenly, lightning crackled across the sky, and the earth trembled. The evil Dibia appeared, his face contorted in terror. "What have you done?" he roared. "I told you never to break the egg." "I already destroyed the calabash. Now the spell is undone and we're doomed," the Dibia cried out. In an instant, wicked spirits from the evil swamp materialized around them, dragging them away into the darkness. Zika screamed, reaching out desperately. "Mother!" Meanwhile, back in the thick forest, Eze awoke with a sudden gasp. Nkechi, stunned, rushed over to him. "The spell is broken," Eze said breathlessly. Without wasting another moment, they hurried to Kalu's compound. When they arrived, Nkechi froze, tears streaming down her face. There, in the center of the compound, stood her parents, Kalu and Oge, locked in a warm embrace. Nkechi ran into her mother's arms, sobbing, overcome with relief and joy. The enchantment had been lifted, and her family was whole once again. Evil begets evil, but good will always overcome it, no matter how long it takes.